Search for the Merkaba online today, and you will likely find a guide to a specific type of meditation. It is presented as a high-tech spiritual tool, a counter-rotating geometric field of light that practitioners visualize surrounding their bodies to facilitate healing, energetic protection, and shifts in consciousness. Modern spiritual workshops often teach that the word itself is an ancient Egyptian legacy. They divide it into three distinct components: Mer, meaning a field of light; Ka, meaning the spirit; and Ba, meaning the physical body. In this framework, the Merkaba is a vehicle of light that unites the spirit and the body. This Egyptian etymology, however, does not exist in the historical record. From a linguistic perspective, the three-part breakdown is a recent synthesis, appearing in the writings of spiritual teachers in the late 1990s, rather than in the text of antiquity. The real word is the Hebrew Merkabah, literally translating to chariot or vehicle. It describes the overwhelming vision of the prophet Ezekiel, a stormy, celestial manifestation of God's throne, carried by four-faced living creatures and massive wheels covered in eyes. For the early Jewish mystics, the Merkabah was the most dangerous subject in the world. The Talmudic sages imposed severe restrictions on who could even talk about it, warning that approaching the divine throne was a lethal endeavor. To drive the point home, they told the story of four elite scholars who attempted the ascent. Of the four who entered the celestial orchard, one looked and died instantly. Another looked and lost his sanity. A third became a heretic. Only a single scholar, Rabbi Akiva, possessed the preparation necessary to survive the experience and depart in peace. We are left with two versions of the same symbol that have almost nothing in common. The same chariot that once promised madness or death to the most learned scholars of antiquity has become a risk-free meditation for a global, spiritually eclectic audience. The first phase of this tradition flourished between the 2nd and 10th centuries, across Palestine and Babylonia. These mystics were known as the descenders to the chariot. They were an elite, carefully vetted class who believed that God sat upon a literal throne in a specific, heavily guarded celestial location. Their journey was a form of throne mysticism, a perilous attempt to navigate through 7 heavenly palaces. To pass each gate, the mystic had to recite complex hymns and present precise magical seals. One lapse in concentration, or a single error in a divine name, resulted in immediate destruction. The heavens were guarded by terrifying angelic hierarchies, beings of fire and lightning, who actively defended the throne from the unworthy. Standing near the summit was Metatron, the Prince of the Presence, a massive entity whose role was to mediate between the fragile human intruder and the unmitigated luminosity of the Creator. In this era, the power dynamic was entirely one-sided. God was a terrifying, transcendent sovereign, and the human being was an inherently unworthy subject attempting to survive a brush with absolute holiness. By the Middle Ages, everything changed. As Jewish communities faced expulsions and exile, the mystical journey had to become portable. In the schools of Safed and Spain, the dangerous literal ascent through physical heavens was gradually replaced by a complex internal map. This was the Kabbalistic pivot. The literal beasts and wheels of Ezekiel's vision were systematically mapped onto the Sephirot, the 10 divine attributes of the Tree of Life. The chariot was no longer merely a vehicle. It became a schematic for the inner life of God and the structure of the human soul. Under the teachings of Isaac Luria, the goal became tikkun, cosmic repair. By harmonizing the opposing forces within their own psyche, like the love of Abraham and the restraint of Isaac, a person could become a Merkabah themselves. They were no longer trying to reach a distant throne. They were trying to build a stable vehicle for the divine within their own consciousness. While this interiorization neutralized the literal risk of being burned by angels, it stayed within a strictly religious frame. The human was still a participant in a divine restoration, and the ultimate goal remained centered on serving and reuniting with God. In the late 20th century, the symbol moved again, this time entering a global spiritual marketplace where traditional religious boundaries had largely collapsed. This new environment, or occulture, stripped the Merkabah of its strict Jewish theology. The ancient rabbinic rules, the covenantal obligations, and the visceral fear of God were all discarded. In their place, modern esotericists installed the language of pseudophysics and sacred geometry. The terrifying, unpredictable angels were replaced with mechanical descriptions of electrical and magnetic circuits, and the divine throne was replaced by a rigid geometric shape, the star tetrahedron. Teachers like Drunvalo Melchizedek popularized a 17-breath meditation that treats the chariot as a technological device. By following specific breathing patterns and hand mudras, the user is told they can program the rotation of these geometric fields to activate their light body and facilitate interdimensional travel. The evolution was now complete. The divine sovereign had been removed from the picture, leaving behind a mechanical system for the user to manipulate at will. Compare the atmosphere of these two worlds. The ancient mystic sat in a dark room with his head between his knees, fasting for weeks to prepare for a journey that might kill him. Today's student learns to activate their Merkaba in a well-lit workshop or from a YouTube video, focusing on personal empowerment and aura healing. A practice that once required a lifetime of ascetic study and risked literal death now asks only for an entry fee and a few hours of your time. We have moved from an elite, exclusive ritual of absolute submission to a democratic, universal technique for self-improvement. This shift is a requirement of the commercial wellness market. In a world where spiritual practices are products, they must be safe, they must be accessible, and they must provide a tangible benefit to the buyer. A meditation that promises madness or destruction is a product that cannot be sold. What we are seeing is the ultimate internalization of spirituality. By removing the external, transcendent God from the chariot, we have repurposed the ancient vehicle to serve the only authority left, the self. The modern Merkaba is a mirror. It reflects a culture that has taken a symbol of awe and submission and rebuilt it into a technology for personal sovereignty. We have inherited the chariot of God, but we have redesigned it to travel only as far as our own desires.